Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to tell the story of an entire nation, its struggles, its growth, all of it. But we're going to see it all through the eyes of just one family. So how can two totally ordinary lives tell the story of a whole country? Well, that's where John Charles Paul and Maria Beamish come in. I mean, their journey, it's just incredible. From two different shores of the Atlantic all the way to California, their life story is the story of 19th century America. We're talking immigration, big industry, that whole push west. Yeah, their lives played out against this backdrop that was just packed with change. Think about it, the Civil War, the Transcontinental Railroad getting built, cities just blowing up with new people and energy. Their story isn't just part of that history, it is that history, but brought down to a really personal, human level.
All right, so let's rewind and start at the very beginning. We've got two completely different stories, two people starting in two different parts of the world, but their paths are about to cross in one of America's busiest port cities.
Okay, look at this. This really shows you the two different worlds we're talking about. On one hand, you've got John Paul. He's from Newfoundland, a British colony back then, and he has a solid, skilled trade. He's a cooper, just like his dad. Then, on the other hand, you have Maria Beamish. She's from Ireland, probably escaping the Great Famine, and she shows up all by herself, working as a domestic servant. So different, right? But somehow, both of their journeys end up in the same place, New Bedford, Massachusetts.
And it's there, in New Bedford, the whaling capital of the world, literally the city that lit up the globe with whale oil, that they meet and get married. You know, their story was actually pretty common for the time. You had these two young people, both with Irish Catholic roots, finding each other in this new world, in a town completely built around the sea.
But you know, they weren't going to stay put on the East Coast. For them, New Bedford was just the starting line, not the finish. Just like so many other people at the time, they felt that pull, that powerful promise of the American West.
And this timeline here really just lays out the massive scale of what they did. I mean, look at this. From way out in the North Atlantic to Massachusetts, then all the way to Chicago in the heartland, and then the final push across the entire country to San Francisco. This wasn't just packing up and moving to a new town. This was a full-on continental crossing.
And here's the key thing to get. Every single stop they made, it wasn't random. It was all tied to what was happening in the country's economy. They went to Chicago because it was blowing up as the nation's railway hub. It was a city that was just hungry for workers. So their personal choices were directly connected to America's huge industrial boom.
Okay, so now we land at their final destination, San Francisco. You have to picture this city. It was practically born overnight because of the gold rush. It went from this tiny little outpost to the major city of the American West. And this is where they'd really build their family. And tragically, where they'd also face the kind of heartbreaking loss that was all too common back then. So John shows up in this new city with a great skill, right? He's a cooper. But look at what happens over time. This list of his jobs tells a real story. He goes from that skilled trade to just general labor, and then to working as a janitor and a watchman. It really shows you how tough it could be for working-class folks. You had to adapt to survive, and you have to wonder what kind of physical toll a lifetime of that kind of work took on him. And through all of this whole incredible journey, John and Maria had at least 7 children. And get this, their family was literally born across the country. They had kids in Massachusetts, in Illinois, and in California. But that number, 7, it hides a really brutal truth about life in the 19th century, because Maria would outlive at least 5 of those children. Can you even imagine? For so many people back then, family life was just constantly living with the reality of loss.
Just let that sink in for a second. Maria buried her son Robert when he was just a little kid. Then she buried John Jr. when he was only 20. Then her daughter Abby at 33. Her whole life was just marked by these incredible, unimaginable losses. And she wasn't alone. That was a burden so many women carried back then. And then, John's own journey came to an end in 1879. He was just 55 years old. The records say he died from dropsy, which we'd probably understand today as some kind of heart or kidney failure. And just like that, Maria was a widow at 51, still with kids at home to take care of.
But you know what? The story is far from over. In fact, what Maria does for the next 30 years, it's just this incredible story of pure resilience. It really shows you the strength of women in that time. So, what does a widow do to get by back then? Well, she did what so many women in her position had to do.
She got creative, she adapted, she started taking in lodgers, renting out rooms in her house to bring in some money, all while still running a home that by then had her grown-up daughters and even her grandkids in it.
And Maria, she lived to be 82 years old, which was pretty incredible for that time. Think of everything she saw. She watched San Francisco turn into this huge modern city. And get this, she even lived through the massive 1906 earthquake and fire that basically destroyed the city. She saw almost a full century of change in America.
And yet, after all of that, after crossing an ocean, crossing a continent, raising a family, losing so much, you go to their final resting place today, and there's nothing there. No grave marker, no headstone to tell you any part of their story.
But here's the most important thing to take away from all this. Their monument isn't made of stone because it doesn't have to be. It's built out of all those little breadcrumbs they left behind, census records, old city directories, a notice in a newspaper. When you put all those little pieces together, you build a memorial that tells a much richer story than any stone ever could.
And so, that really leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? The only reason we know John and Maria's story is because somebody dug through all these old, forgotten records. It just makes you wonder, how many other incredible stories just like theirs are out there, hidden away in our own family histories, just waiting for someone to find them?